leaders and practitioners. This show is brought to you by CXR, a trusted community of thousands, connecting the best minds in the industry to explore topics like attracting, engaging, and retaining top talent. Hosted by Chris Hoyt and Jerry Crispin, we're thrilled to have you join the conversation.
Hey, Cathy, it's been a minute.
Yeah, good to see y'all.
It is good to see you. Have you finally washed all the Vegas off of you now that we're back from Unleashed?
No, I know. I wish I could go back. I wish I had more time there.
Are you a big Vegas fan?
I like to I like to play poker, and I like I like blackjack and craps, and I just didn't get to play very much at Unleashed. I was so tired by the end of the day.
Yeah, it was. I felt like it was. I don't know, Jerry, if you felt the same, but it felt to me like we were busy. Like it was nonstop, like activity, meetings. We did a series of interviews.
Yes.
Kathy, you're one of those. We did a series of chats. I mean, it was. I felt like we were busier than normal.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to play poker, but you need 4 to 6 hours, um,
Yeah.
Kathy, to play properly. Otherwise, you're just forcing
Yes.
the issue, and then you do that, and then you're missing stuff that you really wanted to learn or deal with.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
played in a tournament the night before we got there, and now it was like 4 or 5 hours. And I like a tournament. At least it's a
I
defined
got it.
time. Play once, pay
We
one
need
set
to
amount.
do the
You win
World
or
Series
lose
of Poker, Kathy. We need a
for a
group
recruit.
of
Yeah,
yeah. I think we're
absolutely.
close. Maybe next year.
I
Yeah,
love it.
we can certainly do qualifiers.
There are conversations happening to try to put all of them together, like put those wheels in motions for the last about a
Okay.
year, right, Jerry? Like we were looking at it, and then the Erie, and what Ethan was. We're looking at it. I mean, the wheels are moving.
We're
Yeah.
trying. We'd love to do it in competition for one of the conferences,
Mm.
but the World Series of Poker, with 6,000 people all playing against one another, is kind of the Super Bowl.
Yeah. But any of those casinos will host a private game for you, mostly because they have dealers there. So if you just are in the realm of a poker house, I know the Dallas poker houses will host a tournament for you, you know,
Oh, that's cool.
Oh
and
no,
the
that
big
might be interesting because
Choctaw
Oh,
or,
Vegas gets
you
complicated.
know,
oh, that's something
yeah.
to
I mean, I
think
think
about.
you probably have to pay for a dealer, but that's not that much, you know.
I think that's easy. Yeah, work that out.
Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
look, poker is super fascinating and interesting. It's probably not why people have dialed in. So, for those who
Yeah.
did just join us, maybe missed the bumper, this is the Recruiting Community Podcast. This is our first time live streaming in a new platform, so we expect a couple of hiccups here and there, so bear with us. But we try to bring to you insights, the things that are kind of going on within talent acquisition, and we try to do it in the form of a conversation. We have friend, guest, and member with us today, Cathy Henesey. And Cathy, it is good to see you. We did get to spend some fun time with you last week. You were on a panel with us. We did an interview at Unleashed. Like I said, it was super busy. But you've recently moved into this VP of Extended Workforce title at Advent Health. Do you want to really quickly before we kind of jump in, because that's so fascinating to me? Do you want to? Can you just give a little bit of an
Sure.
escalator pitch on who you are, and then let's dive into what that means.
Absolutely. So we're going to Workday in December, and Workday classifies the non-employee as a contingent worker. And it's much more complex than what we do in PeopleSoft. So they have to have a persona, they have to be tied to organizations, they got to be tied to systems, and so it wasn't just going to be that easy. So we really need to think about it as a system, how we're going to get these people in and who's going to get in under this category. And so at that point, and given our size, we just passed 100,000 employees. The contract labor piece was not owned by anybody other than supply chain. I owned it in TA as a default during COVID because that's where we needed to get additional labor. Nobody wanted to call it a VP contingent workforce. We don't think that's a friendly term. But so great minds came up with the term extended workforce. So it's really all people that are extended from our normal workforce. So it is all non employed employees, contractors, physicians, students, anybody that walks through our doors that would need a badge or need access, which is pretty much anyone. That for us, if you add them all up, is about 65,000 employees. So that is,
Wow.
approaching our, real number.
I mean, that's a lot. And how do you mentioned
It
this a
is
little
a
bit
lot.
as we were getting ready. Yeah, we were going to jump in. That's a lot, especially if you just hit
Yes.
100K. How does that begin to get categorized?
Yeah, so we categorize them into 8 groups, and I'm just looking at my group. I would say the largest group is our uh, physicians and their clinical staff that are not employees. So they are at our clinics or they're affiliated with our hospital systems. You know, many doctors have an affiliation but not an employee. And so they need to be in our system. That roughly is about 20,000, 20 to 25,000 of them, of that number. And then we have agency, of course, contracted services, all our SOW, overseas, contract labor. And then we have vendors, of course, like anybody else, just all of our vendors that need access need to come on site. Students and instructors, we do a large clinical rotation of students that come through, interns, residents, all need some type of access and profile. So that's a large majority. Volunteers, that includes volunteers as well at all of our
Oh, okay.
hospitals. That's about 3,000. And then chaplains. We have a lot of chaplains from all different denominations that are not necessarily employees, but they do come on board to visit hospitals and they need access.
Wow.
I'm just thinking. I'm trying to wrap my head around the scale of that, Kathy, and then I'm
Yeah.
thinking, was somebody mad at her? Like that? That's a
Well,
lo-
you
that's a
know what they
volume.
said? They're like, we don't know. I mean, I think they look to me, not to credit myself, but I think they're like, if Cathy can figure this out, I mean, she's the innovator. She thinks about things differently than other people. We've got to, all the things happen today. So that the processes exist, they just exist in their own bubbles.
Yeah.
And so we just really need to pull everybody together and then develop a workflow into Workday, which then gets to UKG's timekeeping. Maybe half of that group needs to actually time clock, right? And then go into other systems. So it just is really for me helping pull people together. I have a project manager that is working on the Workday team that is helping just look at all those different pieces and putting a workflow together. And not everybody needs to go into Workday. Not everybody needs to clock in UKG. So we don't need to buy licenses for them. So it's a process of figuring that out.
Still, when you look at your customer, when you look at the patients, they don't
Mm-hmm.
see a separation between your full-time folks and all of these contingent folks. In many instances, they
Right.
view them as one and the same. So you
Yes.
being able to track all of these different categories and making sure to some degree that they achieve some kind of standard or training or whatever it is in relation to how they present who you are as a service provider, as a hospital.
Yeah. Absolutely. The ones that are definitely interact with patients actually go through the same culture class. We call it whole care experience that our own employees have to go through. So that is our introduction in onboarding, our culture and what is expected of patient care and just customer care in general, right? It's for all employees. They are expected to go through those same classes as well. And we track that through our ALN, just like any regular employee. Our volunteers are expected to do the same as well.
Do you have, I mean, by now you have to have done some level of an assessment in terms of things that you want to impact, things you want to change.
Yes.
I'd love to hear sort of from the left to the right, like, do you have the lowest hanging fruit and then just the big, the big elephant that needs one bite at a time? Do you have your two extreme items that you want to kind of tackle?
Defied act in and of itself. And so, in discovering and going through those, we've discovered we have more overseas people that we didn't know about through our IT team and through statements of work, which is positive. We definitely want to continue to look at outsourcing opportunities. by project. So that definitely was interesting. And then um, we have an MSP, a sole MSP, through, are looking at our agency spend. But what we realized during COVID, we did get very relaxed on that and allowed other firms to come in because of just sheer volume. And
Yeah.
of course our MSP approved that. And really our internal audit team has really done some digging into identifying who all those firms are and realizing how many contracts we signed outside of the MSP, and reining those back in. That's probably our biggest right now is our biggest opportunity, not only from a compliance standpoint, because somebody signed a contract that didn't necessarily go through the normal approval phases.
Yeah.
So we just need to make sure that the compliance and the credentialing is the same standard that we expect of our MSP and their sub suppliers. So that's kind of what I'm working on. And then just more rigor around when do we use agency, how often, do we have other solutions first, then collaborating with the talent acquisition team. Are we filling those positions? Do we have those positions? That's our greatest spend if you look at the 8 different categories that we have between the two groups of agency and contract services. um, I think that is definitely the biggest opportunity. And then the second, I would look at just like our student workflow and opportunities for recruiting, right? It's easy to think about clinical rotations of nurses that come through, or radiology, or different programs that our local facility will partner with local schools, but we're not necessarily capturing that in a larger database, if you will. And so they're in a system somewhere, but where are we capturing that? And are we cultivating those as future pipelines?
And
Got it.
is
And
there?
so it's just a lot of dots connecting people to make sure that we know they exist.
Yeah, and was a team built for this? I mean, as you move into this role, did you kind of get to build a super
I am
team for
budgeted
this?
for a team. I haven't hired anybody yet, because we're just really trying to get the infrastructure in place. And right now, I partner with the Workday team and the HRS team and TA. So I have enough people to partner with, that building the model is okay for now, but I will eventually have likely a couple of data analysts, a full-time project manager just to work on projects.
Yeah, I would imagine you're going to need people in different markets as well, almost like COE touch points, right? Like areas of
Yes, yeah, it
responsibility,
will be
not to
a
audit,
COE.
but
We are setting up, yeah, exactly. It won't be big, but we are setting up a governance model as well,
yeah,
just to talk through policies and what happens if somebody doesn't follow through. So the governance is made up of representatives from the different areas. So we have finance and supply chain and the medical office, and in the volunteer office. And so we'll have a group of people that will serve as our governance council to set new policy and processes.
have you given any thought yet to how you're going to sort of track victories, how you're going to track efficiencies that have been achieved across what you're
Yeah,
smiling? I
I
assume you have.
definitely. Yeah, for sure. And that it's a more things I discover. Agency spend is easy to track, right?
Yeah,
But what is not easy to track is how what I'm finding is how somebody codes something. If you don't code it as an agency or a contract services, you just put it in, some random expense, it doesn't get tracked. And so what I'm finding is companies that someone will call me, hey, I'm having a problem with this firm. I'm like, I don't even have any spend for this firm, nor do I have a contract. So how can they exist? And so then I have to get finance to go pull an invoice. And so, like, who are these firms? I mean, literally, I have firms that we're spending a lot of money with that I get nothing. And so it's just tracking down, where does the contract exist? Why is it getting coded that way? And so I'm working with finance and audit to uh, put a little bit more rigor around who can add things to those um, categories of agency and contracted services. And then look for things that they can't put it in other categories, right?
Right.
Because then it just doesn't get captured correctly
Well, it gets
if
captured
they code
in
it
the
something
category
else.
called
Yeah.
other.
Right, exactly. Miscellaneous
Miscellaneous and
expenditures.
other.
Well, and the
Lar-
number of
Yes.
systems,
Yeah.
yeah, the number of systems you
And so
must
we've got
have.
to have a way um, to really figure out, looking at invoices, where is that going? There's got to be some keywords that get flagged, that it gets coded correctly, because
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
our biggest. I mean, obviously, like any service company, labor spend is 55-65% when it's all said and done, and so obviously that's your biggest opportunity to save money.
well, and you have a process driven mind. I mean, so this work can't be at all unappealing to you, if not, a mountain of
Oh
work
no, it's
ahead of
it's
you.
really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, and just thinking about, why do invoices show up that we have no contract for or something, and I do find that it does exist. It just didn't get put in the right system, right? And that, again, it's been very siloed, not surprising, just not something that had been centralized in the past. So siloed and put in a bucket somewhere that somebody didn't find.
yeah,
And so trying to find it all.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you've got, I mean, this is years of work, if not a permanent sort of adjustment
Oh
for you,
yeah.
because I mean, I just remember doing the last global ATS I was part of for the implementation, and remember we had markets that were like, man, this is great, we love it, but then when we were done with that stage, we went in and did the analytics implementation, and that's when we found out those who thought who were telling us it was great and
Yeah.
some weren't even using it. Like we could see that there was nobody using it. No
Right.
was coding anything in the system. Nothing was getting entered. And that was a whole nother, hunt, a whole nother project that had to sort of put together.
Sure.
But this is sort of in the
Well,
DNA of what
yeah,
we're
when
going
you
to be
start to
doing.
pull reports and you're like, well, wait, the math ain't mathing, right? I mean, so you got to go dig it up and figure out what is this? And so, and I report to my boss, who is the VP of Workforce Optimization, who's going to look at it from a larger picture of, where are there opportunities to optimize workforce, whether it be through automation, so heavy technology automation, or look at it globally. Where are there opportunities to look at you know large things that many companies are already outsourcing, revenue cycle,
Yeah.
coding, just general invoice healthcare coding is very popular done overseas,
I imagine this
and the big
pulls you
big
into
firms are doing it already.
yeah, I imagine this pulls you, Kathy, into a lot of conversations you might not have been part of before, also from a
Right.
planning standpoint, like much more
Absolutely.
strategic.
Yes. Yeah. So that's exciting. So I definitely get to, work with my boss and participate in those discussions as he explores that. He has quite an extensive background and previous non-healthcare background doing big aerospace outsourcing and contracts. And so we can look at that continually. We're
I would
gonna
imagine.
in healthcare, we're gonna be constantly driven
Yeah.
I would
those
imagine
costs.
you're also trying to reconcile against what are leftover approaches from hospital to hospital. Since you're a system of
Sure.
hospitals, each of them
Yeah.
may have evolved a whole different approach to how they looked at contingent labor. And so you have to
Yep.
reconcile it to one platform kind of thing.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, we have, and the thing is, we continue to merge or buy new hospitals, every 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
We're buying or creating a joint partnership. And so then every time that comes on board, now we're developing a process to look at their contract labor spend and who are they using, basically kind of looking for these 8 categories of people, and then how do they handle it? And then kind of enveloping them into our team and how that works, and learning from them too. Maybe they have a better process that we hadn't thought about.
And I can see with the scale that you're talking about, the implications for talent acquisition are especially and management, obviously, but
Right.
just for talent acquisition in terms of what we need to do or not do in terms of the hiring process, I think is fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. I saw a
Yeah.
recent statistic. I think PwC put it out. I need to go find it, but they said that, we're headed for uh 50% 50% gig economy versus full-time employees. And you look at my ratio, we're not far off,
You're not
right?
far off at
Of
all.
some type of, right, some non-workforce, non-employee type workforce, whatever that looks like, right? In the way that you do work. And I believe it. I believe that more and more people are going to look for part-time work or gig work or whatever we want to call it, just alternative ways to manage their own schedules.
Yeah. Have you?
Which in
So,
nursing and clinical, because they're all shift work, is really easy to do. uh, it's a culture change, and patient, make sure patient care is changed if you're going to change out so many people. That's the
Are
hard
you,
part.
uh, Kathy, are you talking to or finding other folks like yourself who may be doing some of the same work in another hospital system?
Yeah, actually, I just talked to a person last week that is at a system bigger than mine, or ours, and he is in a similar role, named for the same purpose, to look at the future, right? But the hardest part is, he and I both have the same level of, like, how do we get attention to this to get more eyeballs on it and
yeah.
working faster, right? Because the opportunity is there. It's just, it is competing priorities, and of course we're competing with any type of workday resources. And so he is struggling with the same concept of, wow, there's so many opportunities for optimization and saving money. It's just getting all the right players in the same room.
Well, and where, Kathy, how do you
But
even?
I have gone and looked for similar roles in other healthcare organizations, and I find bits and pieces of it. But I'm really trying to partner with the staffing industry analysts to find corporations. Obviously, you see these roles in corporations. We're seeing it
Yeah.
in our own community, right? Where TA is taking on contract labor or contingent worker or something along those lines to look at a larger workforce.
I think there might have been something done by Conference Board too. I'm gonna go look into it. I
Hmm.
when I last looked at this, companies had 10% or 15%, and
Hmm.
but you're talking about a scale that's much bigger. And now we're talking, when you add up all the dollars being spent on that versus this versus whatever,
Hmm.
there's a chunk of change that would, raise a lot of red flags.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I've easily identified 15 to 20 million I could save in a year on just
Wow.
centralizing and focusing on it, and looking at it as a pipeline to TA as well,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's conversion or hiring
Well,
from the pipe, the people that come through, making sure that they're in that visibility eyesight,
how,
essentially.
Kathy? So you're finding all of these areas that need attention, and certainly kind of this task force you're gonna be building out, this team you're gonna be building. How are you determining what gets your attention first? Is it a budgetary savings, or a manpower savings, or just a, like, how do you decide?
I go after the money. I can get the most attention with money savings first. I mean, that's natural, right? I can get
Yep.
CFO's attention, and also um, filling positions. If I can work on just as simple as agency conversion, we can convert agency after 2 assignments, and yet we have no process for that and no formal discussions. Maybe the manager has a discussion, maybe they don't. No intentional conversations ahead of time to really talk through that. And so if we set those processes up and state our intentions from the beginning, I think we would have a lot more conversions to hires. The same with students and residents that come through. There was a time, I think, was found 2 or 3, maybe 4 years ago, that is, I think it was actually before COVID, that we had all these residents. Every facility invited nurses to come through on a clinical rotation, and we partner with the local school as a good community thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't the thought of, hey, this is a pipeline for our future hires, for new grads, because we get so many applications. But we found we were only hiring 20 to 25% of them, which is still a good number. But considering the time we spend, I've had some facilities that don't hire any of them. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, this is we're doing this for the university. I'm like, no, it's a two-way street. This is for us too, to look at the best and brightest and invite them to join us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How long until you think you've got some flags you've been able to sort of stick in the ground, like can't argue undeniable victories?
Yeah, I think I'll be close with, in the next 2 to 3 months. I've got a couple. We're gonna maximize our internal agency as well, and put that into the fold of our external agency MSP and our statement of work. So I think I have some quick wins with that, that we can implement and start seeing that money, and then looking at the conversions of those. I think those are easy wins, too. I mean, just identifying these people is a huge eye opener for
Yeah.
people to think, wow, okay. Just like you think 65,000, that's probably a lot of money somewhere, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that definitely gets the attention of executives to say, well, what are we doing with it?
Well, okay. So how long have you been enrolled now? It's not been long.
January.
Okay, January. All right. And I know the answer to this question is probably going to be very different in another 6 months. All right. But we're in the
Yes.
middle of May. Is there anything your today self would tell your January or your December self before you said yes? Is there anything you'd give yourself a heads up to?
My first 3 months was still helping TA transition with a new leader because they had just, filled my backfill. So that was definitely that. Um, I think I just have to, I think I'm doing the right things and continuing to get in front of people. Um, the hard part is knowing how much to push, right? So I don't know if I would tell myself push harder because I'm not sure that I would have gotten any farther along, um, because
Yeah.
I understand the priorities that people have, right? I mean,
They're also
there
learning a
are,
lot. So this
yeah,
is
it is. Yeah. And
this
Well, it's a
is
policies
relationship
kind of
and
call.
new.
There's a
it
relationship
is.
piece too. Yeah, a trust and a
Yeah.
relationship
I mean,
internally.
because all these different groups that touch these people, I had no interaction with from a talent acquisition standpoint. I may have heard their name, maybe interacted, but most of them I haven't. And so it's really just introducing myself, talking through, taking a project manager with me to document current state and really understanding what is working well and what isn't. And that's been kind of fun because like the Met staff are all in a different database, which I'm not sure everybody really understood why that is. And then so learning that and like, does these IT people know that all these people are here and they're somehow feeding through and not thinking about it from a workday standpoint. So bringing those to the workday table. I'm also participating in a lot of the workday info or design sessions, not only for recruiting, but also then this kind of as a exterior, uh, perimeter discussion to make sure that the process would be the same. But definitely looking at helping with the talent acquisition process
Yeah.
still.
Well, and we've seen you on a couple of our work. We do, for those who are listening, we do a monthly workday call. And we've been doing it for almost, I guess, about a year. We get anywhere from a dozen to 2 dozen people that join it. It is open to anybody who wants to join that. It's cxr.work/workday is where you can go and kind of sign on to be on it. And while that's primarily talent acquisition, like TA driven conversations around workday, I imagine there's quite a bit of crossover because we've had a couple of organizations where you've got the talent management person in, or somebody from sort of a cousin function who's starting
Yes.
to ask more robust questions about the platform and really digging into it.
Yeah.
But
I've
until
talked to a
you can
couple of
put all that
groups that
data,
out.
I was going to say, until you could put all that data into one central whatever and know that
Right.
it's somewhat accurate, you're now giving a total meaning to or a new meaning to workforce management in a
Yes.
way that
Absolutely.
allows you to understand the balance of what's coming, what is representing us here, and
Right.
whether and how we should be touching it in the future.
Yeah, I've met two systems that I'm certain they're community partners that I've had outside conversations that they went through Workday implementations within the last 2 years and totally underestimated the contingent workforce piece of it and how it all integrates and how it works and how critical it is. Like they just were thinking like us, like for PeopleSoft, it's not that big a deal. It's a very informal process. Set up a record. You may or may not have some information about that person. When on Workday, you really got to
You're,
have these things
I
and
think it is
it's going to be tied
underestimated.
together.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm beginning to think that we need to be asking our leaders, do they really think they have a handle on what is being hired, if you will, to help represent our organization, including automation, chatbots, or whatever, um,
Sure. Yeah.
and the degree to which they've got a handle on that. I would suspect most TA leaders in most industries might be underestimating the number of external folks playing in our
Mhm. Yeah. If you don't have it
sandbox.
centralized, you don't have nobody's pulling all those records together.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Fascinating.
it's
Yeah.
amazing.
I used to
Yeah.
argue
I
that
mean, I get a
that the
weekly report. I got a weekly report as a TA leader long before this came about. Uh, just the very raw data called CWRs, contingent worker report. And every time I get it every week, I'm like, there's 45,000 people on there. I'm like, who are these people? I never heard of them. Knew what did somebody do with this report? Somehow I got copied on the report, and obviously only until this new role, I was like, oh, I get that report, and then I realized there's another 20,000 in report, a different system for med staff.
yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say big orgs. I would argue, and I used to argue all the time that I think TA leaders are the most well connected in the
Yes.
organization than almost any other function. You can argue with HR, right? But with almost any other function because they do touch those lines of business. But I think Kathy, you're kind of tapping into another. It's like an onion, right? You just keep peeling back the
Right.
layers. That there's just more detail. There's more nuance in each of these functions, and then you got your rogue elements that are not
Right.
in a malicious way,
Oh,
but they're trying to
constant.
run the business too and doing their own
Yeah.
thing.
Well, that's why they sign it. They're like, I need somebody. I need today, and maybe somebody doesn't know the process, right? We found a new leader, just went and ran, signed a contract, and his leader didn't tell him about the process, so he didn't know. So he just hired the firm that he had at his last company, and then
Yeah.
now I have reports that show, invoices that are getting paid for contract labor. I'm like, whoa, where is this firm come from? And so I put things in place, then I go track it down and say, well, who signed this? Who are
Uh,
you? Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
yeah, you've
Well,
got millions
that's
on
my
the table.
fault then.
You're gonna roll back in a year easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
So it's fascinating, but not surprising, right?
Mhm.
When you take
Yeah.
a big system and try to centralize everything. And obviously those are the things that you find with Workday, really things have to be really buttoned up and in a rigor state than what you ever had before, is my understanding.
Yeah, I think that the intelligence that will come out of this will just be fascinating. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
look,
they
Kathy.
they I've been warned, Fred, these two companies said, you think you may even have a hold of all those people, like people are gonna come out of the work that you don't even know about. They don't show up, don't have a badge, they just come and do work, God knows how they get in, and then all of a sudden they can't do their job now because they don't have access.
Yeah,
That's what happens like the first 30 days of workday is what I've heard.
it's
So we're
going around.
doing everything
Yeah.
we can to try to slice data differently and figure out to make sure that doesn't happen
I
as
mean,
best we
there
can.
is. I think to Jerry's comment earlier, there is value in what a lot of leaders have found in sort of creating this data lake, right? This single resource where all the different systems are kind of dumping stuff in.
Mhm.
But I also think
Yeah,
inherently, if you can get it into one centralized, when it makes sense, if you can get it into a centralized system, I think there's just an exceptional amount of intelligence you can pull out of that.
sure.
So, yeah,
Well, and that's going to be the $1 million question down the road is where does it sit? If it is going to be a 50-50 workforce solution,
yeah,
one day, does it belong in talent acquisition COE or, in a workforce conglomerate team of people,
Mhm.
right?
yeah.
Because you're going to be pulling from different resources.
Well, and you've got eight. I'll have a little fun with this. You've got eight or so categories you were talking about earlier, but I don't know if you saw earlier. It was maybe 2 weeks ago. The AIM Group put an article up that shared the jobforagent.com. It's the first job board for AI agents, but you can hire or you can employ or you can post. It's
Oh,
really kind of an interesting. I feel a certain way. I was chatting with Jerry about it on Texas morning. I feel a certain way about that. It's like kind of
yeah,
interesting. I wonder if you'll have a
that's
ninth
interesting.
or tenth category that's
Yeah.
agents.
Well, I mean, we certainly have bots, right, that do lots
Mhm.
of things, and you can argue. I'll write that down. Is that's certainly an option, right? Because when my boss looks at the bigger solution, whether it's automation or you know some type of global approach, I mean, automation is a big part of that, right? I mean, I see lots of opportunities and so many great tools in TA that is automation that can, substitute transactional work of the recruiter.
Sure,
So
sure.
they
Not
Part
only
of
can
it is
be
employ
a
them,
more
sub,
but
of that
be
talent
used as an arm
advisor
to
role.
discover the work that's out there as well.
beyond the
Right.
work though is how whatever it is impacts your customer, your patient. So if
Sure.
that automation AI bot or whatever ticks off your patients, that's going to be reflected in how they viewed their experience
Sure.
as a patient in your hospital. So fundamentally, if I'm HR, I want to have to some degree be able to sit at the table with anything that impacts my brand.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. I
know,
mean, you're starting to see these stories, where a parent or somebody is putting in symptoms of things in chat gbt and coming up with diagnosis, right, the long-term diagnoses that no other doctor could have. Well, that's just a matter of time that's in a hospital, right, and
Sure.
that somebody's monitoring all these different symptoms, all these different things of patients, and proactively things are saying, this person is at risk for x, y, and z, right, and that will make a better nurse and a better doctor and a better patient experience, and hopefully identifying things faster. Or if you go in for your primary care appointment and you list all these different things, I think we'll get to a world where we are identifying things so much faster, that maybe we won't have
Yeah,
prolonged
I don't know.
care
The
that
the
needed
the
for
conspiracy
long-term
theorist,
diseases.
the conspiracy theorist in me is like, stop typing in all your symptoms to Chat GPT. There's no HIPAA. There's no protection.
That's
Somebody's
true.
gonna sell
Right.
that. Then it's gonna go to the insurance. That's
Somebody's the
considered pre-existing. Stop talking to the robots until they're employed.
Oh, and yeah, and then the pharmacy people are gonna, have jump into the conspiracy too, that we got to keep the drug companies alive, right?
There's a whole circle. Well, look,
And it'll be interesting.
that's a
Yes,
whole nother podcast. Whole other podcast. Kathy,
yes,
we
right.
do this as we kind of wrap up each of these, and I'm just going to ask you really quickly if you're going to write a book on kind of the state of this adventure, right? What you kind of what you're learning. Yeah.
I definitely need to journal my adventure, right? I
Oh,
should
for sure.
just keep a little private journal of fun things and
absolutely.
conversations, and uh, maybe I'll call it protected territories or something, because
Oh,
it's hard to get people to centralize and think about a larger group and the betterment of a whole group is, than you focusing on your own solutions.
I love
It's
that. Well,
it's
there's
a
a
it's a
natural
hard culture
fear.
change.
I love that. I think you touch on an interesting point. There's a natural fear when you ask people what they did all day, that
Yeah.
they
Oh,
think you're trying
yeah.
to get rid of them. Yeah.
Right. Right. Oh, and people definitely have fear of, obviously, AI and chatbots doing automated things for my routine tasks.
Yeah. I love it. Well, okay. So
Yeah.
who
No.
gets present company excluded? Who gets the first signed copy?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, I'd have to think about that. Maybe my mom, right? You got to go to dear old mom,
There you go.
Sweet. Yeah, I love it.
right?
I love
Yeah.
it. Well, Kathy, I'll say it again. It was wonderful to get to catch up with you last week at Unleash. It was really fun to have you on the panel, and then when we did the interview in the Shaker booth, it was a lot
Yeah,
of
that was a
fun. So
great. We had a great
just
time.
yeah, just good to see you. Looking forward to see. I don't think I go anywhere for another. Well, I lied. I'm somewhere in a week. I'm only get a week at home, but I'm not sure when I'll get to see you again.
Yeah, I'm sure we will cross paths on a webcast meeting or webinar.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Wonderful. Well, thank you for
Well,
giving
great.
us time. I know you're super busy, and just really appreciate you giving the microphone and some attention.
Very cool.
Absolutely. I'll start my journey, my journaling. Yes, now.
Yeah. I love
Journaling.
it.
All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
You got it, everybody.
Talk to
If
you
you
soon.
want past or future episodes at cxr.works/podcast. And with that, we're going to dance on out of here. Let's do it.
Thanks for listening to the Recruiting Community Podcast, where talent acquisition leaders connect, learn, and grow together. Be sure to visit cxr.works/podcast to explore past episodes, see what's coming up next, and find out how you can join the conversation. Whether you've got insights to share or want to be a guest on the show, we'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in learning more about becoming a member of the CXR community, visit us at www.cxr.works. We'll catch you in the next episode.